Welcome to the Gay Liberation Network here on Chicago Access Network Television. I'm your host, Andy Thayer, and we're very pleased to have with us today Manny Garcia and also Rafael Cervantes from a new group, CESLA, Coalición en Solidaridad con Latin America. CESLA for short. Yes. Well, and people have probably, unless you're living under a rock, have heard the horrible news of the last few days, most particularly the totally barbaric U.S. attack on Iranians in Iraq. Just the level of stupidity, especially in the wake of the U.S. invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, this one totally takes the cake. Taking out, quote unquote, attacking and killing a leading military figure in the capital, at the international airport of another nation. This kind of provocative attack is just designed to just totally make things worse for the peoples of the region, and I think my guest would agree, also people here in the United States, because there's a reason why the United States has got fifth-rate social services in every single respect, is because of the maintenance of empire, and much worse than that is, of course, the millions of people that the United States has killed in its wars of choice over the last several decades. And so while today's program is focused on Latin American struggles, on resistance against various coup regimes in South and Central America, it would be wrong of us not to talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq and the threat of war against Iran. Gentlemen, before we start our show talking about Latin America, I'd like you to, Manny, why don't you share your thoughts, and then Rafael, your thoughts about this latest United States attack.
Yeah, sure. So it's going to be very interesting for this year, especially since it's already beginning. Basically, the Supreme Court, in one of their famous cases, decided, I believe this was around the 1980s, that the president could make war. Mm-hmm. No, actually, and I remember it's the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. The Supreme Court during back then said the president of the United States, as commander-in-chief, can make war, just not declare it. So now. And
then we got the War Powers Act that supposedly took that back.
Exactly.
But here we are again.
We're here again, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So it just goes to show, like, those in power have also power of interpretation of those laws. And since we all know how much damage Trump has caused the Supreme Court and the lower circuit court judges, and replacing them with Federalists, I believe it's a Federalist League or
Federalist Society.
Society,
yes.
Correct.
Yes.
We're yet to see what legality is going to come out of this. Already Nancy Pelosi has said that there was no authorization for this through Congress. It's dispositive and disproportional. That's what she said.
I would just point out that when Bush was doing extraordinary renditions, and then Obama's improvement on it was outright killing people, that the way for Trump has been well paved by both Democratic and Republican administrations. What are your thoughts, Rafael?
Well, I've been wondering, recently what I've seen is a lot of actions, intervention of the U.S. in Latin America. And it's nothing new for Latin America to have all these interventions and pushing. But with respect to oil, there has been some events that come as a surprise, including, for example, the discovery of new deposits in Mexico, the coup in Bolivia, Brazil, and of course Venezuela has suffered to the max. And I think that is like a plan B for energy for the U.S., to have that ready to do this attack that they did. That's my take on this. The connection I see from this
extractivism.
But as with the oil in the Middle East, actually, it's not the United States that derives. I mean, now we've got so-called energy independence. It's actually something to hold over United States economic rivals, Japan, China, and Europe, that, quote unquote, we've got their oil. And I think that has historically been the number one reason, is something to hold over their heads, to maintain empire not only through force of arms, but through control of a vital economic resource that China and Japan especially are really dependent upon.
Yeah, very geopolitical. It's also very financial as well. The petrodollar is a thing. A lot of the influxes of the markets are due to petroleum prices, commodities markets, etc. So it's a geopolitical conflict. It's also a battle for resources, but it's also to keep the power of the dollar and from destabilizing, as many countries use.
Because it is a dollar-denominated world economy. Yeah. But we're going to have to move on here, unfortunately, because we're going to be talking mainly about Latin America. But one thing I did want to get up on your screen really quick here is the more things change, the more they stay the same. Here we are in the midst of impeachment, and guess what? We have a U.S. attack on the Middle East, in this case, Iraq, back during the Clinton years, flipping the script. When the Oval Office is in trouble. Unfortunately, we just heard just before going on the air tonight that there's been yet another United States attack just north of Baghdad that killed 6 people, targeting supposedly Iranian forces within Iraq. It should be remembered that these Iranian forces were critical to the defeat of ISIS in that country, and now the United States is turning on its erstwhile allies. Once again, tell the Kurds, they'll tell you something about that. But most importantly, I want to call your attention to a very important event tomorrow, and that's coming up on your screen now. This is a scene on your screen right now of the first, I should say not the first, but one of the more recent U.S. attacks, the attacks that the demonstrations around the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad came in response to. The United States attacked 3 or 4 cities within Iraq with bombs that undoubtedly killed people. This is not some barren area. It's a populated area. You can see in this photo here. There's a big demonstration tomorrow, and we're asking people to come out at 12 noon in front of Trump Tower, 12 noon, Wacker and Wabash Avenue. Another important announcement coming up here. In the event the United States attacks Iran, there's going to be an emergency demonstration called by a whole host of organizations at Trump Tower, 5:30 p.m. the day of the bombing. So if you hear about another U.S. attack, in this case on Iran, please make your way down to Trump Tower in response to that. And also just very quickly here, a week from tomorrow, there's going to be a demonstration against the so-called right to life, the people who are trying to take away women's right to choose to control their own bodies. Please come out to that counter-protest against the right to life at 12 noon, Saturday, January 11th, southeast corner of Daley Plaza, Dearborn, and Washington Boulevard. So we do have a caller on the air, and we'll get to you right now, caller. If you could make your comment brief.
Good evening. Is it all right to call you? I always ask you, is it all right to call you Andy?
Hello? Yeah, absolutely.
I just make sure, Andy, and you guess, when you look what's going on, I'm going to try to make my comments short. When you look what's going on, it's about people that's in power. And when you look and see in terms of our immigration that happened, we have had 6 children in the custody of immigration that have died. And when the president talking about building that wall, you notice you always got to have some type of scapegoat. And you always talking about building the wall along the Mexican border. But he never said about building a wall. If you're going to build a wall, let's do it right. He never talking about building a wall along the Canada border, because why? They're much more closer to his skin pigmentation. And when you look at other things, it's all about white power, and you got certain white guys that's in power, is not going to give up that power at all. And then he embodied the guardian in terms of white power, and in terms of women, particularly white women, they will deal with sexism, okay, like it ain't nothing. But they're not going to give up that white power. And you have a lot of white women, and you thought that we're going to come out and vote for Trump. Guess what? They were his biggest solid bloc that came out and voted for him.
That's
and
right.
You look
That's
what's
right. Okay,
going on.
caller, we're going to have to wrap it up here because we're going to try
Okay,
and
take care.
cover a lot of things on tonight's show. Anyway, gentlemen, your response to the caller's comment about the Trump's base and so forth, very quickly because we need to move on.
47% of white women nationally voted for Trump. It's really safe to say that the power is in the vote. However, it's also in the electoral vote. Right, and the electoral votes does not always seem to align itself with the popular vote. Many times, this is not the first time when Trump won election. We got like George Bush in Florida, correct, and the machines that were locked in there. Also in legislation as well. Who gets to vote?
Yeah, I mean, it might be said, if the Democrats were such an appealing alternative to Trump, it wouldn't even be close, and you wouldn't have to worry about the margins about electoral college. I mean, you look at the kind of lack of enthusiasm that Hillary Clinton raised among people. There's a reason why we got Trump. Look at who his opponent was. But we need to move on to talking about tonight's subject, which is going to be about protests and struggles in Latin America. We're going to just focus on Bolivia. Manny knows a great deal about that, as does Rafael. But first, I'd like to just quickly introduce their organization, which is the Comité, actually the Coalición en Solidaridad con Latin America, Committee on Solidarity with Latin America, Coalition in Solidarity with Latin America. This is how you can get in touch with them here. CESLA, it can be reached at solidaritylatina@gmail.com for those of you watching on Facebook who can't see our graphics. So, gentlemen, let's talk about what's going on in Bolivia right now.
It's a quick pace in what's going on right now. Everything is changing. Let's go back in time and focus why are we here right now. Okay, the year was 2003, privatization of water, privatization of gas at really low prices internationally, being sold to U.S. markets. However, in domestic markets, it was almost around 65 to 70% of the daily person, the middle class salary going to water and gas. So of course it made everybody mad. They went to the streets. Then we got the water war. We got the gas war, where around 86 indigenous lives were massacred.
This was about what years then?
This was around 2003 and 2004. This is it was a certain month. It was called during October. We in Bolivia now we say Octubre Negro, Black October, as it's quite remembered. As a response, the syndicates and the unions started formulating on a response to this. Elections were held as the president at that time, who ordered these killings by the police and by the military, fled, of course, to the United States. Now he resides. He has multiple houses in the United States, but that's another story. He left with 40 million.
Where did he get the money?
Oh, the Bolivian treasury. Exactly. So he left. In comes the biggest syndicate, which is the Cocaleros, or the coca grower syndicate.
Okay.
And they present this candidate, Evo Morales, as a new leader for the country.
And he would have been at that time the first indigenous leader of the country in its long history. Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely, and for a huge time he still was. We're talking around 15, 14 years. He was after election and election democratically elected. It was a very democratic, popular elections that he always held. There was a lot of observers from the UN. Everybody understood and relayed the message that there is real democracy happening in Bolivia during this time. We're talking around 2005 to now 2019. What happened in 2019? Of course, the U.S. Knows it's where the resources are. They follow the U.S.'s and the governments, the companies, international companies. They know where resources are and where these scarce resources can be extracted. The biggest one in my country, we have many. We have natural gas reserves. We have iron, ore, zinc. However, it's lithium.
Yes.
Lithium
Used
is
in your cell phone and everything else.
it's the white gold.
Strategic mineral of the
Exactly.
21st century.
Exactly. So, of course, this is a huge deal to any country, right? To any company or any subsidiary company that works for a big company like Tesla, right? So we got ACISA. Weeks before the
ACISA
is a company.
I see.
Subsidiary company that refines the salt in the Salar de Uyuni, where the biggest deposit in the world of lithium is. They refine it. They were in contract with the Bolivian government. In that time, Evo Morales was in power. The contract went haywire. They canceled the contract. And we got the local people from Potosi also saying, oh, what happened here? We could have gotten some money. So they felt betrayed by the president. Correct?
Yeah.
They're also followed by syndicates in that there were like federation of miners, cooperatives, you name it. What happened is this. After the coup, which happened weeks after, where Evo Morales had to flee for his life, in comes this other person, self-proclaims herself to be president, and then we see Tesla's stock rise. Exponentially. As investors now know, they have confidence that
They're going to get their lithium.
they're going to get the batteries. They're going to mass produce Teslas. All you have to do is just follow the money, right? But after the coup attempt, which was very, very bizarre and very unique in Latin American history, it's very detailed stuff, so I don't want to get too much into
you
it.
don't have a lot of time.
There
but
was
what made it unique, though?
what made it unique is the amount of solidarity, international solidarity. Back in the 60s, there was no cell phones, there was no social media. Information went by slower.
Yes.
So,
people were in solidarity versus the coup.
Exactly.
I see.
And to the effect that the president of Mexico, AMLO, for whatever reason he might have, saw what was happening, sent his presidential plane to pick up my president after his officers were offered $50,000 to capture him dead or alive.
Yeah.
And, they say it's sticks. They say we'll offer 50,000 sticks, the palos of but that means money. He of course there was trouble going to get everyone. It was a whole movie. It was like a Mission Impossible to extract my president.
Yeah.
Going through airspace from Mexico, he had to they had to ask permission for Honduras, Central America, Peru. Peru told them no, you don't have permission. They had to land in Lima, and they waited for authorization from the Bolivian government for permission. Tuto Quiroga is an ex-president during Bolivia during 2001 and 2002. And for some reason or another, the high command in the Bolivian Air Force called this gentleman called Tuto Quiroga, which I've met personally. It was horrible. But they called him without having any official title, no sense of no authority. Said, should we allow this plane to go in and Chimore, a certain region where it's very heavily populated with pro-Evo villages? Should we go and let them have permission? He said, yes, we'll make it so that he fled. He fled, and he was very cowardly about it. So he should thank me for his life. He said this in Mexico. He outright said it. So this coup was planned
So-
months ago.
Yeah.
Maybe even years ago.
Well, but bringing things to the present, my understanding that there has been a whole series of attacks on indigenous people in the wake of the coup. Tell us about the resistance, either of you, to the attacks on the indigenous people within, because there seems to be a real racial element to not only the coup, but obviously these physical attacks against indigenous people. It's as if those descended from the Europeans are saying, okay, you've had yours, now we're going to get ours back.
Exactly.
And the wealthy are, of course, as in many areas of Latin America, are those of more Spanish descent rather than indigenous descent. It sounds like, can you tell us something about the number of people that have been hurt by the violence against indigenous people?
Right now, there's over 1,000 injured. Different demonstrations in different parts of my country have been blocked or strictly gasified with tear gas or even shot from airplanes, from helicopters. Right now, there's more than 34 dead, 1,000 injured, and around 300 missing. If I remember, if I can recall. However, the uniqueness of the coup in itself is what you mentioned, is this dimension of Judeo-Christian beliefs, this Eurocentric vision of we'll take ours now. Basically, the usurper, her name is Janine Áñez, the one who self-proclaimed herself to be president. She lifted a big Bible, in a very theatrical and very symbolic sense, said the Bible's coming back to the Parliament building, to the governing building.
We don't care how many lives it will take to bring it
Does
back.
not matter. And she specifically said Mother Earth. In our language, it's Pachamama. Mother Earth is out. In comes Christ. So in the name of Christ, natives were killed. And even more sad, what makes this coup very, very unique is this hate towards oneself in the native community in my country. Natives have killed natives as well, in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, right? The Judeo-Christian belief, right?
Thou shalt not kill.
Oh yeah, well, except, right?
Unfortunately, we're getting down towards the end of our time here. We could have gone on for like 2 hours here. And for those of you at home, we had originally planned on talking about all sorts of struggles all across Latin America. We had to abbreviate that, not only because of things going on in Iraq and Iran, but obviously the story of what's been happening in Bolivia is very critical for those interested in justice struggles. I'd like to just finish up quickly by you gentlemen talking a little bit about your new organization, and tell us about CESLA.
Well, of course, what is happening in Bolivia is not unique in Latin America at this point, and the protests and the repression has been seen a lot in Chile, in Colombia, in Argentina, in places where also neoliberalism is collapsing. I mean, the economic network that they had is totally bankrupt, and they don't know what to do.
People are fighting back.
Yeah. So, in view of that, is that we made a call to try to unite the different solidarity groups or individuals, associations in Chicago, to have a response. And to offer some help and solidarity, like in the past. It's nothing new, but is something that we want to renew and get new people, young people.
It's effective, yeah.
Yeah, bring all the groups together, bring all the solidarity together. And that's what CESLA is about. This is how you can get in contact with them, solidaritylatina@gmail.com. unfortunately, we're at the end of our time here, so I'd just like to again emphasize some important announcements coming up here in the coming days here. First of all, the big protest tomorrow, 12 noon. Say no to another war. We saw what happened with Iraq. We saw what happened with Afghanistan. Never again. Come out tomorrow, 12 noon, Saturday, January 8th at Trump Tower, corner of Wacker and Wabash in Chicago, just across from the Trump Tower. And then, of course, we've got the abortion rights demonstration coming up a week from tomorrow, and that's going to be a counter-protest against the so-called March for Life. This is the year when the Supreme Court could be dramatically, maybe even overturning Roe v. Wade. So this is crunch time for those concerned with feminist issues, with all of our rights to control our bodies, whether you're a woman, LGBTQ, or in solidarity with us. This is very, very important. Come out at 12 noon, Saturday, January 11th, at the southeast corner of Dearborn and Washington Boulevard. That's the southeast corner of Daley Plaza. And then we should also note that there is an emergency response plan in the event the United States does attack Iran. Please come out 5:30 p.m. the day of the bombing. If it happens sometime after 3 p.m., then that emergency response will be the following day. But put it in your mind, 5:30 p.m., day of the attack on Iran. If it occurs, come out to Trump Tower, Wacker and Wabash. There will undoubtedly be a march to follow once we gather, but very important that people come out to that. And then finally, we'd just like to say thanks to all those who have made tonight's program possible, and you'll see them on your screen here.